of IEEE Computer Society since 2005 and is a senior member since 2014. He is also a professional member of the Association for Computing, ACM. Professor Regal has co-authored over 200 free-reviewed articles on Internet of Things, wearable computing, and many other publications. He has very good experience on now AI-related fields and doing a lot of workshops. Then there is a very good opportunity to we work with him, and this is very important for all the participants today. Then, without wasting more time, I kindly invite you to, sir, please start these workshops. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen. I hope you can see my screen and hear me talking.
Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Let's start with a quick video.
Visionary. Illuminating galaxies to witness the birth of stars. And sharpening our understanding of extreme weather events. I am a helper, guiding the blind through a crowded world.
I was thinking about running to the store.
And giving voice to those who cannot speak.
Do not make me laugh.
I am a transformer, harnessing gravity to store renewable power. Paving the way towards unlimited clean energy for us all. I am a trainer, teaching robots to assist, to watch out for danger, and help save lives. I am a healer, providing a new generation of cures and new levels of patient care.
Doctor, that I am allergic to penicillin. Is it still okay to take the medications?
Definitely. These antibiotics don't contain penicillin, so it's perfectly safe for you to take them.
I am a navigator, generating virtual scenarios to let us safely explore the real world and understand every decision. I even helped write the script. Breathe life into the words en muchos idiomas. Y escribí la música. I am AI, brought to life by NVIDIA, deep learning, and brilliant minds everywhere.
So that's a video from NVIDIA. I'm talking to an audience with a lot of AI background, and therefore you are familiar with NVIDIA and the changes NVIDIA's hardware has made to the improvement of AI technology. With that, a lot of different applications in AI. Here we are just looking at a few on this graph. The applications we are talking about here are things that the researchers have been doing over the last few decades. And now we are at a point where these technologies have been helping or becoming better than average human. So the line here is to show the performance of human and the average human and how AI can do better. For audience, things like common sense completion is a task that we thought earlier AI won't be able to do. Now, since a lot of new work and work that is related to deep learning, generative AI, now we are able to do common sense completion almost like you. And there are many other applications where we can do better. With this and the advancement we see in AI technology, and particularly with the hardware that is supporting it, we wanted to look at how AI and generative AI particularly can help research. So generative AI is something that is of importance, as you all would agree with me, because here is a graph to just highlight the impact of generative AI having in the last year or so, a couple of years. Here is a graph showing the number of businesses that use AI in its business function, at least one of the business function. You take a business and its business function, at least one of it. If AI is used, then you get a 1, otherwise you get a 0. So 2017, the number of businesses out of which that were like surveyed, about the survey was conducted by McKinsey. In 2017, the number was about 20%. 20% of the business using AI at least in one of their business functions. 2017, something interesting happened, as you might again know, deep learning becoming popular. AlphaGo, and it's AlphaGo coming and beating the Go champion, and things like that happening in 2016, 2017. Deep learning becoming mainstream, and with that, AI becoming very popular. At least half of the companies that are surveyed use at least in one of their functions AI. But the numbers are getting, then it was sort of stagnated there, about 50% since 2017-18 to 23, when GPTs and generative AI come into picture. So generative AI in 2023 has taken this 50% or half of the companies to almost 2 or 3/4 of the 3/4 of the companies, right? So now about 75, 72 here to be exact, 72% of the companies, if you take 4 companies out of that, 3 are using AI in its business functions. And this is on the rise. We are going to see a day very soon where all businesses are going to use AI at least in one of those functions, one of their functions, but many. And we are talking about how AI is going to come and imagine the way how the workforce is going to be in the future. With that, here we are at a conference where we are talking about AI, and conferences are about research. And therefore, we are going to talk about how generative AI can be used for research workflows, specifically where AI can come and really help boost or accelerate research. So the topic for me for today is generative AI in action, hands-on strategies for transforming research workflows, how we can do research better using with the help of generative AI. while we improve the performance of research, how we can do research better and faster, we also have to be mindful about the ethical implications of such research, how and where we can use AI and where not, and so on. So that's the idea for the session or the workshop today. And I'm taking this opportunity to thank Sly for inviting me to do this workshop. So for today, I'm going to talk about these topics. I'll give an introduction, a very brief one, assuming that you all are familiar with AI, introduction to AI and generative AI and how it's important. Apart from the motivation I already gave you. And then we'll discuss about some opportunities we have with a little hands-on, given that you're talking about hands-on strategies, how we can use these opportunities, particularly opportunities in research workflows, during doing research, while being researchers, how we think we can use generative AI in the research workflows and the opportunities that are there. I'll move on to a few prompting techniques. Now that we are going to talk to AI, or we are going to communicate with AI, the communication with this generative AI or the LLM models has become very important because now we don't communicate anymore using our regular programs and then inputs and outputs, but we are going to communicate using natural language. So the natural language processing is playing a big role in doing so. However, as those who use natural language, people will have to understand what's the best way to communicate with these models or with these systems. So that is the next part. I'll spend some time on the prompting techniques and some based on experience, based on other people's experience, and based on the understanding of how these things work. The prompting techniques. And then I'll go into some challenges, ethical and otherwise. What are the challenges that are out there? How we can overcome them while we are navigating through this process. With the challenges, I'll talk a bit on consideration, meaning when there are challenges, how we can overcome them, what we can think about, how we can think about overcoming these challenges. What can we do about it? As researchers, as those who are getting into research, what we can do about it. That's the considerations. And with that, I'll conclude the session. So please, let's keep this being a workshop. Please, let's keep this more conversational as much as possible. Feel free to stop me, ask questions. Also, if you feel not so comfortable talking and asking questions, use the chat box, the Zoom chat, where you can put your questions, and then I'm just keeping the chat box open on the other windows, on the other screens. I am happy to answer them as we go. So that's the plan and the logistics. So let's now dive into the first topic. We'll go through 6 topics as I mentioned earlier. So as you are again coming from hopefully the AI background, as you know, AI is not anything very new. Like the world now woke up to AI, although it was more of a fiction, more of a subject for movies in the past, earlier past. But then now, slowly AI crept into a lot of applications without knowing. But recently, with generative AI and GPT models, this has become mainstream. Everyone can start using it, right? So 1942, as you will know, Alan Turing, Enigma machine, that's where it all sort of started. And since then, a lot has been done. For example, just to remind you, 1964, most of us were not around at that time, but 1964, what happened is the very first chatbot was built. A chatbot like ChatGPT, obviously not anything like ChatGPT for that matter. A chatbot was built, and this chatbot was very much like a machine. It has so many limitations. It's so easy for a human to chat with this and understand that it is not a human that it is that we are talking to. It is a machine. It's very simple to understand that part. So chatbots like Elisa was very primitive. Even 1995, the famous chatbot Alice was introduced. Even that was not as so good as human. So we know that we are talking to a chatbot when we talk to it. However, with a lot of things happening, like I said, although it was not, we have not listed it here, with the deep learning, 2017 and so on, and now with the generative AI, we have gone a long way, particularly in the field of conversational AI and with the help of natural language processing and obviously large language models and GPTs. That is what we have done, and we should be proud about the achievement we have made as AI research community. But with that, here we are talking about how we can use the tools we build for our better research. We do research for these improvements, but not just for AI research, any research. As you know, AI is not a larger field, and it encompasses fields like machine learning, and deep learning is very popular and effective. And we are talking about generative AI here. We are only talking about generative AI here, but with machine learning, deep learning, all that we have big data, and also another field, a complete field that was developed around data science, and big data is in the cross-disciplinary between the two, AI and data science. And also, obviously, data science also has other aspects like data analytics. So we're talking about specifically here generative AI. What generative AI does, as you all know, it takes inputs as prompts, and these prompts now can also come in various forms, not just text, multimodal. It can be, inputs can be of multiple modes. It can be an image, it can be a video, it can be a voice. Those are the inputs that are possible. But ultimately, these inputs are going to be translated into a text, which is what we call a prompt. The prompt with the model, we go through the model and it's going to produce an output. And the output could be again text. A very popular one is the text, because we are everything that we have done and we have been doing are mostly starting with text. Even if you are making a movie, we start with scripts and text. Even if you are making a presentation, it's the same. So we think and we narrate, we do things through text. And text is bigger, it has a bigger connotation than it just what it simply looks or literally sees. And other forms are audio and video. Again, like I said, we can make audio, video, particularly audio, where the text is involved. However, it's not just text. It also has things like voice synthesis and so on, and then generated video. All these are now possible, images obviously, and also it's possible now for these large language models to look at a lot of programs, computer programs, and generate its own programs when it is prompted. As you know, the things like GitHub Copilot is very popular doing so. And there are many. But today's topic, with that introduction to what AI, generative AI, where we are at, what we are talking about, here comes today's major focus, which is how generative AI can be used in research workflows, right? So when you want to do research, how you can use generative AI. That is the discussion. So for that, we will start with opportunities. Opportunities are situations where we can use generative AI in research. So when it comes to research, typical research at a very high level will have a research, what you call a life cycle. And here is a typical research life cycle. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, in your case, in every one of your case, but then it is the generic typical research life cycle. How do we start? We start with a research conception and execution. So that is where we come up with the research idea, which involves a lot of things. Like when you want to say where we come up with research idea, we brainstorm, we innovate, imagine, connect different things together, identify problems, understand problems, and all that is part of coming up with research ideas, so research conception. And then executing the research is doing the research itself, right? So doing research can vary from like going and preparing a questionnaire and going and sharing it with subjects, collecting information, analyzing it, finding patterns. All that can be execution. It also can be execution, something like building a system, starting from scratch, building or bringing multiple things together, hardware, software, whatnot, build a system, and then use this system to come up with some new ideas and try out those ideas in those systems. That could also be research execution on the other extreme, but there could be a lot of things in between. For instance, research execution could also be, we have collected data from, let's say, various sensors in an Internet of Things. And then those sensor data can be used to analyze various patterns and figure out which pattern is making sense and how it can be used to improve the system. All that are research execution. So we can do a lot in research execution, and most of what I believe most of you are from undergraduate too, and most of what you do in terms of research is A and B, and you will start with A. A is research conception and execution, and then go to B, which is research dissemination. Dissemination is you are going to present your research, share your findings, share your analysis with others. It could be done in multiple ways. One, it can be done like how I am doing it now. I'm not per se presenting a research finding, but this is how it is done. Yesterday at the conference, that is exactly what has happened. A lot of research were done earlier, taking a lot of effort, time, funding, but they were presented, disseminated at a conference system. Conference dissemination is one form where the researchers come together and present and share ideas. And in a conference, there are also ways where you have to write down the research, which are published as publications or papers. Research can also be published without going for a conference or without meeting each other. We can do it through by the authors writing them carefully and submitting it to a group or a publisher, and the publisher finding other researchers, experts to check whether this work makes sense. And when it does, after a few back and forth, the papers can be published and made available in repositories where other researchers can go and find it. Another way of dissemination. So there are a lot of different ways to do a lot of different contexts, conceptualizing and executing research. And then again, a lot of different contexts in which you can disseminate the research. So today, based on our focus, meaning like the participants, we will be mostly working or talking about instances of 1 and 2, or A and B. And then in a research life cycle, we also have C and D. C and D has to happen in research. If not, we will not be able to do A and B. That is what we understood by now, because doing research, coming up with the ideas and doing research execution and disseminating it is not good enough. It won't generate and also it won't become mainstream applications. Things like what has happened to ChatGPT becoming an application, become something that is viable, usable by users. So for that to happen, we had to go to step C of a research life cycle. Step C is research translation, where you take the findings of the research, and which we normally would have disseminated or otherwise kept as a secret so that you can make some money out of it. But then the findings could be translated into an innovation, something that can be marketed, something that can be even given for free, that is okay, but made useful to people day-to-day in their day-to-day life. Research paper writing and keeping or disseminating is good to show that, okay, we have done some work, it is useful, add value to the knowledge in the world. However, translation makes it better, makes it useful by bringing it into applications. So that is the translation part. So with the translation, hopefully we are collecting wealth as in the research cycle. And this wealth can be used for funding more research. The more research can happen with that funding, and therefore the research that was translated, earning funding or wealth could be pumped back into the research. So it's going to go into the cycle again, and more research done, more findings, more dissemination, more translation. So you keep on doing. So the last step here is research funding and compliance. So in fact, research funding involves things like not just asking money for doing the next research, but also asking money for or allocating money for even things like dissemination, asking money for or applying, using funds for checking compliance. For example, if you do a research, whether this research is good to or okay to be used in day-to-day life, whether it's going to harm people. If it's so, how are we going to stop the harming part of it while making use of the good, the positive side of it, or the benefit that the research gives, and so on. So there's a lot of other work done where money and more work is involved. So those are all done in 3 and 4, from making it useful as a useful product application to generating fund and using that fund to fund more research. So that's the full life cycle. And we will be spending time on items A and B. I'm not going to specifically say, okay, this is going to be A, this is going to be B, and so on, but we'll be spending time looking at use cases, looking at examples on how our generative AI tools can be used for doing A and B. That's the idea. So I'll start with some use cases, right? So within this AB area, I'll start with some use cases. So first one is a use case known as literature review. I believe all of you are familiar with this, this task or this use case. So literature review is done for multiple reasons. One, the main reason every researcher is going to do literature review is to understand or to discover what is out there, what has been already done. So there is no point in going and doing more research without knowing what is already done on a particular research topic or a particular research problem. So ideally, research will start with a problem that you want to solve. So then we will also have to know how much of this problem is already solved by other researchers prior to me, before me. So that is where the literature review coming. And that is one of the main reasons why we do literature review. We also do literature review so that we can make a document that can be used by other researchers easily without they spending a lot of time going through all the literature. So that's also another reason. So where we summarize basically all what has happened in the last 20 years, let's say in AI, if you want to summarize, there are thousands and thousands of research that is done, and taking them and summarizing is a really humongous task, but that is the idea. Or you can identify a specific area. What sort of research that is done on, let's say, some sort of a cancer, right? So a specific type of cancer. And how much of the work is already done. How I can use AI in it. So that could be a research area. So now you can go and look at all what is done in the past. So the challenge in literature review as we progress, even now we face, is the volume of publication. So the research published on any topic is exponentially expanding. A lot of people are doing research. The number of researchers in the world are increasing with the increase of the population of the world and those who are educated, those who the funding that are coming for doing more research. And therefore, it is becoming more and more challenging to do a lot more research, and particularly to identify what is being done already. So the current practice or the past practice, if you don't have proper tools and technologies to do it, if a human has to go and do this, how we had to do is in the recent past, what you are doing is we will go through some research repositories where these research publications are listed. So if you see a research subtopic and if you want to go and find what is done already, you can go and search these repositories properly, systematically. There's something called systematic literature review, where you go and do it in a systematic way, following a standard framework to do research literature review. And then let's say you go and see all the work that is done in the past on a particular topic. If what you find is, let's say, 1,000 publications or 1,000 dissemination, it is almost impossible for an individual researcher to go through 1,000 of such publications and then find what is done, what is not done, what is missing, and so on. So what is known as this undiscovered public knowledge will become a problem when you have a situation facing like that. How are we solving it now? We are solving it now by limiting our scope of search. What do we do? Instead of searching from today, all the work at the beginning of such research, if you take an area like AI, okay, AI research started in 1940s. So we start from 1940s up to now is a lot of time, and there might be like 100,000 of papers. So what do we do? No, we can't do that. Let's stop it somewhere early, right? So let's say we'll do it for the last 5 years. So we look at research papers for 5 years from today. So 5 years in the past. So we say, okay, for the last 5 years in a topic like, okay, I took an area like cancer. So cancer and AI, how AI can be used to treat cancer, identify cancer, any of one of these, let's say one of those topics. And instead of saying, okay, I go and look at for the last 80 years or 100 years, what I will do is I'll say, I'll go and look at the last 10 years or 5 years and look at the papers. And even then, the number of papers I'll be getting, maybe of the publication I'll be getting, maybe 100, right? So those 100 papers, then I'll be systematically looking, grouping them, classifying them, identifying, okay, this paper is doing this sort of work, this sort of technique is what it's using. It is using images to do this work. This is another one is using some other vitals to do this work. Ultrasound maybe, or anything else, x-rays and so on, and another one is pictures, various things, right? So we can figure out, group them, and then we'll do carefully analyzing them and do a lot of work to find out where there's a gap. So these are all done with some tools to list research, list some tool to search, maybe use some tool to summarize. But now, with the advent of AI coming into picture, generative AI particularly, all these are changing. Now it's becoming more and more easier to do such research. Typically, here at our university of Peradeniya, where I'm from, when we want to ask a research student to do, like a PhD student or a master's by research student, to start a research, we give the student 3 months, typically 3 months, to do this literature research and literature review, figuring out what is being done, what my problem is, what people have done. And I come up with a place to say, okay, these things are done and this is not done, and it is a problem that I can solve. Spend about 3 months. Now, with all these generative AI tools and support, we believe it can be brought down by a significant number. We don't now have the exact number, but it can be brought down by a significant number. We don't need 3 months. One is that option. The other option is, if you use the 3 months, if you still use the 3 months, what we believe is we can do a much better job now. Instead of limiting our scope to the 5 years, maybe we can expand it to the longer period. The longer period we go, the better, because we might find some ideas that propped up earlier and people dropped over time. And we, instead of coming up with the same idea again, we can say, okay, this was done in 1970s, or this was thought of in 1960s, 1990s. We will not be doing it if we don't have tools like what I'm going to discuss today. Because now the understanding is that we have so much of research. When you want to do literature review, we are going to limit it to a certain time period, because that is all what a human can comprehend and the time we can spend on. It can be expanded again back to the proper research. And also at the same time, we can accelerate. We can do a lot of things faster. What sort of things we can do faster? Things like we can do organizing this research work into groups. We can do faster. Obviously, as you know, AI summarizing is a topic we are working on for a reasonable amount of time now, several, at least a few decades. We have been trying different ways to summarize text using AI, but now we are at the best of it as of now, for now. And based on this organizing and summarizing, we can get into a quick direction for our literature. Right? So you can figure out, okay, by looking at all this, okay, this seems to be the way I'm going to go forward. It can be done very fast. It doesn't have to take the initial phase. Usually takes 3 months, like I said, for a single researcher. But it can be done fast, much faster. Or we can do a lot more within the 3 months. That's the idea. So how this can be done? Okay, one more thing that I missed to mention is that in the current times, we are also more and more realizing any one of this research work is not pure one area research. So for example, even the example I gave, it is not just about the host can mute or give me access to mute. Others, it might be easy. Hope it's not a lot of disturbance here. So what I was talking about is, if you take research, with time, we are realizing they are very much multidisciplinary. Meaning, even the example I took, it is not a research on AI. It's not a research just on how generative AI techniques can be made better. I took an example like cancer and AI. Can you do something in medical sciences with the help of AI for human betterment of the human? So research like that, where multiple fields are involved, in that example, health sciences and computer sciences, right? So an area like that, or various other areas. Such things are involved. For example, there could be something done in health sciences that could be useful in a totally different area, let's say agriculture. Right? So if somebody wants to go and analyze such situations where a particular technology is used for solving a problem in one field, one cross-disciplinary field, that is like between health sciences and computer science, can this technique be used in agricultural sciences and computer science? So when you want to do such things, it is going to be even more difficult than what I explained earlier, finding these connections between areas. Now it's possible with AI. So it's possible because we are able to analyze, organize data and analyze, organize information very quickly, really quickly, summarize them really quickly. So with all that, it's possible to do this faster. That's also another idea that we wanted to float around and think about. So with this, we can do literature review a lot better. And I'm going to show a few tools. So I'm going to just highlight a few tools that can be used to do the literature review better. So I'm talking about tools here. These tools are not typical chat bots or not typical chat engines. They are not ChatGPT or Gemini or Microsoft Copilot or so on. So those chatbots, as you know, are very conversational. So we can communicate, and when we communicate, we have to communicate properly so that we can get the right output. But these tools are very much restrictive in one way, but useful in another. Why it is useful is because these tools have limited interfaces through which we can easily get the information we want. However, they are limited because they have limited interfaces. You can use them better, but at the same time, you can also have limited. It's not very flexible, right? The good part about these tools, therefore, is you don't have to know a lot about how you can make the best prompt possible with these tools. With these tools, you don't have to worry a lot about the prompt. You can straight away use them with some information. So they are built with interfaces like that. And later I'll show some tools. Obviously, you know tools like ChatGPT, where prompting is very important. The communication, the natural language processing aspect is more important. And therefore, at those points, I'll talk more about prompting technique. So to do the next part of tools, we don't really need a lot of prompting. So I'll start with a few tools as we go. And before I do so, I'll also spend a few more minutes on other applications. I started with literature review. One other place where we can use generative AI or AI for that matter is fact checking and specific searches, right? So specific searches involve things like looking for a particular piece of information or a content in a large database. So we can do search by using the typical search engines. However, as you know, the typical search engines are sometimes not very helpful, meaning they will list down all the text that are out there or all the documents that are out there which has the search term we are searching for. But at the same time, they will not be able to help you in identifying the best and identifying a group of text together that can be put into answer the question, answer what you are looking for a particular piece of information. Right? So if you ask for a particular piece of information in a search engine, let's say Google, the most popular search engine, you put it, you get a lot of hits. Yes, the one that has the highest rating will be at the top, and the one at the lowest rating for the hit will be at the bottom. But what we might want is just not the answer at the top. We might want a collection of answers which are in the very first 10. You want to go through the very first 10 and then identify a collective answer, pluses and minuses, and look at them and analyze them. Say, okay, this is here, this is here, this is coming from this resource, this is coming from this source. This one is in a research paper, this is on a Wikipedia page, this was on a private blog post. So different things. And how do I, so all that I had to do if I'm just using a search engine. But now with generative AI, by using the right prompts, by showing the right resources or right sources, it's possible for us to do this quickly without going through the steps I discussed earlier, right? So therefore, it's fast. Checking and fact checking, we can do it quickly if you do the right way, right? Obviously, it can also go wrong. It can also challenge us in places like these systems, these large language models and the chatbots that are built around it. Also has issues like hallucination and whatnot, misinformation, all that are there. I'll talk about them later. However, if you do it properly, if you do it right, they can help you identify, look for a particular piece of information quickly. And then we can use it for generating proper results, generating text, generating piece of information, generating piece of dissemination material, all that are possible if we can systematically properly use it. So that will be useful. In fact, in our the 4-step research life cycle at a higher level, at a larger scale, all 4 stages actually this is useful. Although we are talking about 1 and 2, where research conceptualization, execution, and dissemination are involved. These are going to be very useful, and they will make the life easier. Here's an example, just to be very clear. Reviewing and confirming the accuracy of information presented in news articles, research papers, and other sources. It's all possible by, instead of searching, we can do thorough analysis. In fact, I should have also mentioned other tools here. Tools like Perplexity is another chatbot that does it pretty well. And there is some thoughts that tools like Perplexity will quickly replace search engines like Google. Next, where we can use generative AI are places like ideation and hypothesis generation. I mentioned about it earlier as well when we are talking about the overall big picture. But just to give you more context, more detail, like when you want to do research, you do literature review, and then you find, so you start with, when you want to do research, you start with a problem, and then you go and do literature review to see what is already been done. And then from there, somebody might say, okay, this is what is done in a news article or a blog post. Now you're going to go and find out whether it is true, whether there are research papers about it, whether there are findings about it, whether there are peer-reviewed articles about it, whether other researchers have accepted this as a solution. So you do all that. You can do it using the literature review techniques I explained, the fact-checking techniques I explained. I didn't go into details yet, but those ideas. And then we can now use generative AI tools again to do what is known as the ideation and hypothesis generation. So this is where we are going to form that what we are going to do in research. So how we can do it is use the system to complement ideas. Usually how it is done in a research settings is with the researcher, the one who is doing the research, and maybe a mentor, a supervisor, and maybe colleagues, group research mates. They'll all come together and work on it, talk among themselves. And then that is how usually it will be done. However, now it's possible for an AI engine to help a researcher brainstorm, coming up with ideas. And the good part about using one of these tools is that because these tools are good at memory recall and knowledge breadth. So they know a lot about a lot of different areas, cross disciplines, multiple other disciplines. It's all connected. This information, the AI, the large language models have, and if you narrow it down to the right way, to the right resources, we'll be able to find verifiable information, and we can use them for research. And obviously, like I mentioned, we can use it for brainstorming. We can use it as a brainstorming partner, for instance, to find a research gap, fine-tune the problem statements. So these are part of formulating a research. Formulating a research involves finding gaps, refining the problem statement, doing literature review, which I have already mentioned. So again, these tools can come and help. While we do all that, we also can save some of our time by improving the productivity in other places in research, so that we can use our time effectively. Like for example, we can use these tools for drafting certain sections of a research paper. Let's say a literature review. We can use it for refining language, refining the way how we present, so that it's understood easily. We can refine it to match a particular type of audience. All that are possible very easily. So if not, it might take a while. So for example, let's say I did the research and I want disseminate. Now what I would do typically is I will publish it as a paper. I'll work with the publisher. I'll submit a manuscript, and the manuscript will be reviewed by experts. This is what is known as the peer review process. And then when the reviewers might come back and tell me, okay, these and these points are not very clear, update them. I'll work on those, send it back, the reviewers will check, few back and forth. Finally, the paper will be accepted and will be published by the publisher. Now the paper is published and the paper is accepted by other researchers, peer reviewers, experts. Now, but if I don't want to stop there, because I want to make these findings useful for public, useful for others. But I just giving the same research paper to public might not be very useful. Why it is not very useful? For obvious reasons, because it has a lot of research jargon, it has a lot of technical detail that the general public won't understand. Now, what I as a researcher have to do is to spend a lot of time or get somebody's help to translate what I did as research and findings to something, a news article, a newspaper article, that is. To translation takes time, a lot of time actually. And such things now can be done very fast with tools like this. What I can do is, okay, here's the paper, translate it into something that a general audience in a newspaper will understand. Or audience who are academically okay, academically sound can understand. And so I can do all those very fast and easily by using these tools. So those are going to help improve productivity. Instead of I spending time or my researchers or somebody else, a research student spending time to do these translations. And the translations can also be going and presenting it somewhere, making a small video clip about it, TikTok, for example, right? So any one of those, or a reel, or a small video clip in YouTube, all that it would have taken so much of my researcher's time to do, because it's not just translating what is in the research paper, putting it as a video, but also bringing it down in terms of the level of understanding, the level of complexity, so that a general audience will understand. So such changes takes a lot of effort and time. And if you are a research company who are doing this, there are marketing teams, there are like other teams, dissemination team who works on such angle. Now tools can come and help all. That's the idea. So it will be very much useful in that sense. And obviously, improving productivity, we'll be writing programs, any research you do, data analysis, whatnot. There's a lot of programming could be involved. Translation between one program language to another might be required for certain frameworks to work and various other things. Now these things can be done with the help of GenAI. So and that is another area where we can improve productivity. It can also help in writing technical proposals, compiling relevant information and multiple data together and so on. But it is said that we should not use these tools for doing things like the reviewing a paper or reviewing a what do you call proposal, like a grant proposal that has come for review, because when these documents are shared with us, let's say a manuscript coming to me as an expert for me to check and validate whether it is okay. I should not typically use AI tool for that sort of checking, because when I do so, I might violate the copyright and the understanding I have with the researcher. The researcher is giving me the paper in confidence that and also confidentiality that this paper is going to be checked. The manuscript is going to be only read by me, not by a system where it could also be archived in the system for training purposes and so on. So that is not considered good, an ethical consideration. But at the same time, we can do a lot of productive work using these tools. It's also possible to further improve things, like there are tools, as you know, tools like Grammarly. I have put the link for the students side of it, but then there are also education and various other angles of this tool. So tools like Grammarly, as you know, are coming to help a lot in improving language and improving the structure of a dissemination or a document. And now generative AI is directly included in tools like Grammarly for doing generation. Basically, the tool known as Grammarly Go, which comes as part of the Grammarly Pro subscription, support all that, and therefore it can enhance the publication and so on. So we can use I mentioned this a long time back when I was introducing generative AI. It can do code and data generation. Here's an example, right? So usually when I want to write a research paper, I did a lot of research papers and most of them with tools like LaTeX. And LaTeX being a tool that is a markup language, it can be I can nicely put what I wanted to do, and it generates crisp, scalable, and vector images, right? So, for example, here is if I want to make equations like this, I have to write this type of LaTeX code, as most of you might know. Now we are using it in cloud services like Overleaf. Let's say we write this LaTeX and it generates this code, this piece of equations. So it for researchers who are familiar with markup languages, markup like LaTeX and so on, this is not a burden. It is a little burden, obviously, to write all this, but then it's not a larger burden. However, now with generative AI, it's possible to just write this on a piece of paper. This was actually generated by writing this piece in a piece of paper, giving it to the tool like ChatGPT and asking it to write the LaTeX code for this piece, and it generates this. And I then can copy this and put it to Overleaf type of tool, and I generate this. So such translations are simply possible now without spending a lot of time looking at this equation, writing all this in LaTeX type language, markup language. So that's pretty useful and fast to do, right? So that is also something that related to code or data generation. Here it's code, a lot of markup code generation. So it's possible to use these tools for collecting and organizing data. It's also possible for it to generating synthetic data out of unstructured information. It's possible for it to generate synthetic data. That could be useful in certain situations where we don't have real data to try out a pipeline. I hope you understand what I mean by a pipeline, a research pipeline. It could also be something like a data pipeline, where you start with the data and we do number of steps before we come up with useful information or something that is actionable. When you want to do this pipeline, you need data. So if you don't have access to real data, or you take time for collecting such data, you don't have to wait until the data is collected for building the pipeline. You can build the pipeline by using some research, like some generated data like here, right? So, however, and also it can be used for labeling data. Labeled data is useful for training models and machine learning models and so on. So that's again useful. And improving the data, making it larger, making it scalable, and so on. And also to do analyzing and providing better visualization of data. So all that are possible now with generative AI. However, it is said that we should not use generative AI to collect or to generate data that is supposed to be generated by human. For instance, if I'm going to do a survey, one of the examples I gave earlier about research execution is you work with human, human behavior or human thoughts and so on. Those are analyzed, collected through surveys. So there's no point asking generative AI to answer those surveys because then we are not going to really get the human angle of the data. Right, so some of them are not encouraged and not supported, ethically wrong, but others it's possible to use. Like for example, the example I gave here is very much possible and encouraged. Right, it's making the life faster, more productive, and so on. Right, so now let me take a pause and go into some of these tools. So in fact, I was just listing down the tools, but I didn't show you some situations where these tools are very useful. I'll be looking at a few tools here, not all of them in the list, but showing you how these tools can be used for particularly literature survey and fact checking, small things like that, without doing a lot of prompting, right? So it's easier in one way, but flexible, like I mentioned earlier. It's not flexible because it has limitations. So I have been talking for a while. But I suggest those who are joining the session, you can also open a browser and try at least one or two tools if you have not already done so, so that you will also like log in, get an account in one of these tools, try some of these things out with me, so that it will become like you will also feel hands-on and start using these tools in your work, day-to-day research work, that is research workflows. That's the idea. Okay. So when it comes to doing literature review, we have a number of steps to follow. We start with the research question. We identify the resources from where we want to find literature. And then when you have the data, we do an analysis, critical appraisal or analysis. And then by looking at this analysis, we come up with a synthesis, what to write, how to write. And then obviously we'll also do things like citations for that work and so on. So it's the steps involved in a literature review. So all these steps, now it's possible to use generative AI tools or AI tools for that matter, right? So let me just take, and also these tools that I'm going to discuss supports most of these steps in one way or the other. These tools were built specifically, although these tools have a large language model, generative AI, GPTs at the back, and they have a front end which are much easier to deal with. So here is one, right? So I'll start with this tool called Elicit.com. So those who are online and want to try out, just you can go to the website called Elicit.com. All the tools I'm going to list down have a free version of it, and then a pro or a premium version. So the premium version is obviously you have to pay and subscribe, but the free version is available without any charges. The last time I checked, that is, most probably it's still the case. So I suggest you spend a little time, log into or go to the website elicit.com. And if you have any challenges in doing so, if you find any interesting things to share, please feel free to do so. So a tool like Elicit.com, the website Elicit.com, when you go there, you can basically ask a question or put a topic, right? So the topic that I have put here is a research topic called role of GenAI in education, right? So that's the topic I have put. How generative AI can be used in education, not research, education in general, right? So that's the topic I have put. The free version of the tool will give me, by the way, I took this screenshot sometimes back, at least 6 months old, and therefore the answers will not be the same if you put the same topic now, right? So, but you can put some other topics. Let's say you all are doing the research individually, you think about your topic, put that there. When you put the topic, what you get here is something very interesting. This tool gives a summary. The free version of the tool gives a summary of 4 research papers in this topic. The 4 research papers the tool thinks are the best, right? So it lists down it lists down the research papers below here, but here it gives a summary of the top 4 papers on this topic. Like the topic I have put is role of generative AI in research, in education. So it says GenAI or generative AI is increasingly being utilized in education, with nearly half of students turning to it for academic assignments. So, and it also gives a citation, Decade 2023. It offers a quicker method for content development, creating high quality resources and catering to diverse student needs. Again, the same paper is cited. So this is how you write like an introduction somewhere, right, for a literature review. And you can go, it keeps going, right? So the next part of it, some more citations. Furthermore, GenAI has the potential to enhance teaching and learning experiences across various educational levels. Shastri 2023. So the papers are cited and the details are given. So we can go the summary of up to 4 papers in the free version. But that is one part. Like, so you put a topic, you get a summary of those papers, 4 papers. Actually, you can go for more papers if you pay and subscribe. The main part, the interesting part is with this, the 4 papers are going to be listed here down on the same interface. If you go to elicit.com, you will see listed here. And we can find various information about these 4 papers. Sorry. One, the paper itself, meaning the name of the paper, the authors, where it is published, how many citations are there for those papers. Plus, it has other information like the abstract summary of the paper. This is a summary. It's not the abstract, the summary of the abstract. So the abstract is, let's say, 200 word or 300 word. Here is a summary of it. You can add more things. You can add things like the method that is used. So in fact, like you can click here and add more columns. And so I click here and add more columns will appear. And those details of the papers will also appear quickly. So that this one, like I said, the free version only supports 4 papers. But those 4 papers, we can find more information about those papers. Obviously, this is done using the summarizing feature, right? So, with the summary, by going through the papers, analyzing it, summarizing the appropriate areas of the paper, those sections are going to be we are going to make basically a table with the papers. They are, let's say, abstract summary, the method that is used, the paper is using, the findings, and so on, and then the 4 papers. If you have a paid version, you have more number of papers, right? So that is the tool, and it is the summarizing part of it and also organizing part of it, right? So we have put a topic, and the tool Elicit is giving us the paper that are relevant, it thinks, and to the topic the best. By going through the papers, collecting them together and making a summary, and then individually listing those papers one after the other with the appropriate columns. That is what the Elicit tool does. So in parallel, I hope while you are listening to me, you also are trying and seeing how it works. And if you are like excited about it, and if you want it, if you think it's really useful, you can go for a subscription as you go. But don't do it so yet, because I'll also be showing few more tools which are sort of similar, but also have a lot of differences in them as well. So I'll give a couple of minutes for you to try this out. Go to the website, create an account, which shouldn't take a long time. You can use things like your single sign-on to login, or you can log in by filling in details. So I'm stopping for a couple of minutes for you to try this out, and at the same time, you also can ask questions. So just to make sure that you all are there and listening and don't have questions. So if you don't have questions, can you put a thumbs up? I hope you have those features enabled on your. Thank you, Asha. At least one so far. Maybe others are also doing. Okay, there's someone else. A long list, and therefore I can't see all of your names at once. Right, so let's move on to the next tool. So the next tool I'm going to talk about is something that I find very useful and interesting. And it is again coming from with some GenAI AI involved in the backend. In fact, there are a number of tools built in this domain over the last few years. I have been using some other similar tools as well. There's another tool called AI Miner, if I'm right. Yeah, AI Miner, which does something very similar. I have been using that earlier, but then I found that disconnected papers sounds better, and also it has a specific purpose. AI Miner has more information, like you can mine different angles. So starting from the concept of data mining is another topic that we are no longer talking a lot about research. What it does is AI Miner actually does connect papers that are connected, researchers particularly who are connected and so on. So here it's connected papers is a very interesting visual graph. Again, what you can put here, so the connected papers basically takes a paper as an input. So how do I put a paper? By giving some keywords so that it can find a paper. Or I can just give a paper itself. Like paper has this universal identity for papers which are published legally, officially, DOI. So I can take the standard DOI of a paper and I can put that here, right? So I can just take a title, put that there. If I put a paper here, what it's going to do is it will build and click build graph, obviously. It will build graph by going through repositories, meaning places where papers are kept. Things like there's a paper DOI website where the DOI numbers are given to papers, and therefore some information about papers are there, like paper, author, abstract, and such information, public information. Archive, something that is run by a university where people put research papers for early dissemination. That's not like an official, this is not a peer-reviewed publication site, but a site where you can go and archive papers voluntarily for early dissemination. And there's other places like paper title, there's places like Semantic Scholar, there are places like PubMed, started for medical publication repository, but it now lists down so many others. So again, the free version of the connected papers has limitations on the graph, but the paid version, these tools are not that expensive individually. They are subscription based, but if you want to get a number of tools like this to get a subscription, it's going to add up, obviously. So here's an example, right? So I found one paper to be used. The paper I am putting here is the same paper that I was discussing earlier. A model for integrating generative AI into course content development. That is the paper I selected. So I put that paper name here. I could have put the DOI of the paper. I could have put some keywords and let it find a paper, all that are possible. So here I'm given a paper and I clicked the generate or build a graph button after putting the paper information. And it takes a while actually, and it generates an interesting graph. It generates a graph here. The graph is, by the way, when it generates graph, it also lists down all the papers that are nodes the graph here. So this side, this is the paper I put. It generates a graph with a lot of other papers. You can see there are about few tens of papers, not just one, about 30, 40 papers. Those papers are also listed here. Right? So each paper is listed here. It's possible for me to go to navigate to individual papers and click it. When I click it, it also highlights in the graph. At the same time, I can see more detail about the paper here. The title, the authors, where it is published, how many citations that has happened. And also I can save this paper so that I can find out later from the paper. By the way, you have gone through by creating an account or either single sign or otherwise. And also the summary of the paper. Right? And also if the paper is publicly available, you can just click one of these links, Google Scholar and whatnot, And whatever the information about this paper, if it is in Excel, if it is like if the PDF file is available, those things also you can, this is the Scholar and Semantic Scholar. So you can click those and find the paper if the paper is available publicly, or any information about the paper somewhere else, right? So this is the summary. So you can do it for any one of these papers. The most interesting part, I kept it for last, is this graph. So the graph has information, a number of things. As you can see, how to read this graph. This is like a help. I opened it when I'm taking a screenshot to show you that there are a number of things I wanted to, like this one highlights. One, the papers are arranged according to their similarity. This is not based on the citation, right? So usually, like when you want to identify papers, you can make a graph by seeing, okay, this paper is cited by this paper. So you will connect the two. This is not that. This is similarity by looking at the content, by analyzing, figuring out these papers are closer to each other. Maybe they are cited, maybe not. It's not about the citation. Papers are, the node size is the number of citations. So the bigger the node, more cited the paper is. So we know, okay, this paper seems to be an important paper or like a popular paper, like papers that are more popular. For various reasons, importance is a reason, they are cited more. So citation is the size of the circle. Node color is the publishing year. So this paper, the paper that are listed here, again, is going to be deciding for what is the period. So in fact, we can change the period, and also the graph has the number of nodes. By narrowing it down, we can make it large, like more time bound, like a larger time span. Those you can do. But here what you see is like papers on 2012 and 2014 are cited. The light color circle, so the nodes are papers older, the dark color ones are papers new. And the one in the middle are papers in between 2023, because it's 3 years, right? So those information, the graph can show. In fact, I can just click a node in the graph, and again, I can do the same thing. So instead of going through this, I can just click this node, and that node becomes a central node, and the information about that data is available here. And I can just see the other papers that are more closely connected to that paper. And also you can see similar papers have stronger connecting lines and clustered together, right? So obviously that is obvious, right? So when the connections are here, how the connections are made by similarity, and therefore the papers that are closer to each other in the graph have a stronger relationship with or connected strongly. That's the idea, right? So that's a very useful tool when you want to go through a lot of papers and figure out which papers to take it to the next level. Right? So that's pretty useful, and we can quickly do it. And also this one uses a decent amount of databases, different places, so that you can figure out the list of papers you are going to take for your next step, and its summaries and how these things are connected. So usually in research, when such information is not available by a tool, we will have to do it on our own. That is what I said earlier when I was explaining about literature review. We will have to find the list of papers, then group them as we go. Group them meaning, how do we group them? Group papers that are closer to each other or come into a certain time. Based on the method that is used, based on the data set that is used, various other things. So this one help narrow it down. And also the way how we can see these papers, more details, the paid version of it has more features. And I'm not going into go into all the details of this tool, but a tool like this is very useful. Please feel free to ask questions if there are any. I'll keep going with the next tools. So the next one is one called SciSpace. Very popular tool again. Again, a website. The tool is called SciSpace, and the website is, you have to go to the URL typeset.io. Typeset.io is the website where the SciSpace tool is. Again, the one interesting part about a tool like SciSpace is that it can take a paper from us. we can upload a few papers. So that's another part. Like we have identified a few papers and we want to do more about those papers. We want to make a summary of them. We want to like understand some part of it, compare. Let's say you have two papers, very similar work, but different methods, different analysis, different results. Now, one, you can just carefully read both the papers. You spend time analyzing them, figuring out what's going on. But if you want to do a quick job, and maybe you're not fully thorough job, but to start with, it is possible to use and do something like typeset.io. What it does is it can take a paper, you can upload it, and in fact, you can like with the paper, you can ask questions, and you also can ask it to paraphrase, summarize, all those, make it a shorter version, make it like, like when you want to write a literature review, and if you already have some information, you don't want to just reproduce it, but paraphrasing tools, this type of tool can help. And I believe you know other popular paraphrasing tools like Quillbot, which does the same thing, but not just for papers, for any text. So here is one that can not just do paraphrasing, but it does it in a research context with other information, like extracting information from papers, summarizing them, comparing them, summarize, like, and also like from papers, PDF files of paper that are already available with you. So that's SciSpace. So here is an example, right? So I have given a paper and I asked some questions. So the question I asked is method using this paper, and it lists it down and with some references that are obviously coming from the paper itself, right? And most of these tools also like ChatGPT and whatnot, these papers also support files to be uploaded, or files can be in a cloud storage like Google Drive or other places. I'm showing more of those features in this tool, like you can highlight a portion of the file that is uploaded and you can ask it to summarize. You can ask certain topic to be explained. If you don't know what VOCE is, visual object classes, you can just highlight that part and ask to give an explanation. And also you can just highlight a part and ask it to get related other papers. So all that are possible, very rich tools they are. The interesting part, like I said earlier also, is it is more a tool with interfaces where you don't have to write a lot. For example, a tool like SciSpace, we are not writing anything. You're just uploading papers and manipulating things and getting or going through menus and getting information that are there. Right? So the prompting is very little required in such situation. Right? So one way it is good. Obviously, another way it's bad, because you can only, with these tools, you can only do what is listed in the menus, not other things. Like, right? So that's why it is always perfect. So this tool also support the multiple columns, like I mentioned earlier. So if I upload a few papers, I can get all this for the paper. I can get the name of the file. Obviously, that's where I upload the paper, the method used, and I also can get a lot of other popular columns that are conclusion, summarizing the abstract, or abstract itself, results, summarizing the introduction. If the paper has literature surveys, a list of literature survey. So these things can be included into my table, the table with the papers that I upload. I can upload any papers and then I can list down all these columns. So I can make a summary of all these that are possible. And the paid version of the tool, that's the free version of the tool, you can list it down here. But the paid version of the tool, you also can download the summary into an Excel sheet. And then you can use it for other places, or use it for another, like a ChatGPT type of tool to make a document out of it and so on, right? So with the table. So all that are possible with additional paid version, but the free version itself has a lot of interesting features that are useful for us to do more thorough and faster research. So we can do more. I was mentioning about paraphrasing. So things like paraphrasing, I can do it by specifying the length, the variation, and also like, yeah, so yeah, particularly the paraphrasing, I can also specify the tone, the style in which I want it. Like tools like Quillbot does it much better, but it is a separate tool. But here it is part of a research tool. Paraphrasing also is a phase. So those are some more details, tools. I hope you took a few moments to look at these tools. I listed down only a very few: connected papers, Elicit, and SciSpace or typeset.io, those three. These are basically three websites where the access to these features are given on those website web applications. Okay, so that's what those tools are. In fact, tools like this and a lot more are also available in generic chatbots. Like for example, ChatGPT has a SciSpace plugin. Now we call it a MyGPT. That is there in ChatGPT, right? So let me just quickly show. So if you go to GPTs, in fact, like my now GPTs or the my GPTs, these are GPTs. That is the GPT. What do you call the? I'm looking for the word, like the store, right? The GPT store where you can go and get other GPTs has one category. As you can see, the top categories are writing, productivity, and writing can be useful for our research work. But there's one called research analysis as well. There's one for education and so on. So if you look at research analysis, under this, there are a number of tools. SciSpace is one of them, very popular. So in fact, SciSpace uses, as you can see, they say 287 million papers. So the outcome that it is going to give are based on 287 million other papers. There's consensus. So these ones are plugins. And there's one called Scholar GPT, about again 200 million papers. These are built by different companies who work on research repositories. So for my point is, okay, so you can do this as well. You can just click SciSpace and start chatting here. So when I start chatting here, then I'm talking to this tool, SciSpace, the similar way how I would have, I use SciSpace here in an interface, web interface from typeset.io, right? So I can go to typeset.io and do this, but I also can go to ChatGPT and go to the GPTs and find SciSpace. If I'm going to do this, go to a website, like go to the ChatGPT or Gemini, and particularly I'm very familiar with ChatGPT. I started using it and I'm using it more often than others. And here, if I want to do some work, if I want to do something similar, if I want to summarize, if I want to find papers, I will have to then write prompts. I'll be writing prompts. The prompts, as you can see, are messages to SciSpace, not messages to the complete LLM of ChatGPT, but the SciSpace interface of it, right? So, which gives me limited access to the whole LLM. It will not give answers from everything in the LLM, but with the understanding of the LLM, with the training of the LLM, it's going to give, with the training of, when I say LLM, here maybe it is GPT-4 or 1, some one of those, right? So from there, it will give information for my queries based on these 287 million papers. That is from where the answer are going to come from. So therefore, it is more reliable because it's coming from SciSpace or these papers. So this is possible, but if I want to do this, then I'll have to write proper prompts. That is the next phase of our discussion. I'm going to spend some time talking about how we can write better prompts. I'll give a few hints. I'm sure you have been writing, all of you are using GenAI tools, at least some chatbot like ChatGPT, if not connected papers. And therefore, you will be familiar with prompting and you will have your own style, own way of communicating with AI systems, natural language processing ways of communicating, but in your own way. But I'll give a few strategies. I hope at least one or two of these will help you write your prompts better. And in our situation, why it is useful is because now if I want to use ChatGPT type tools, where I have to use prompts for communicating, we are talking about research workflows for research workflows. So we can use these prompts within GPTs, for example, size-based GPT. So that prompt will be very useful in that context, and it is very open. I can ask it to do anything. I can ask it to search certain things. I can ask it to summarize it. I can ask it to make some questions about it. I can ask it to make a quiz about it. Also different things I can do, right? You see, like it's not limited to the size space. If you take size space typeset.io, whatever they are, very limited number of columns, very limited number of analysis, paraphrasing, and so on. But I can do whatever I can imagine with the same database or same repo if I use prompting. So I personally myself, by the way, I myself don't do a lot of literature review these days. My students, 15 plus postgraduate students who are there are doing those work. But if I want to do some quick check, if I want to verify what they are doing is correct and what they are doing is okay, I'm not using most of the tools my students do, but I use tools like ChatGPT with interfaces like this. So I can, it's very flexible. I can double check, I can do things quickly, and I'm more familiar and I'm comfortable with the prompts that I write. I have a lot of templates. I use them to redo the same thing. If I want to do something similar again, I don't write again. I just take it and use it. So things like that, and therefore it's easier for me. So prompting techniques, strategies are very useful in that context. And I hope it will be useful not just in research workflows, but in other places as well. So I'll spend some time highlighting a few techniques, prompting strategies. So as you will know, why prompting is important is it is useful for this communication, making sure the communication between machines and us, now that we are communicating with this machine using natural language, or NLP, natural language processing, which nicely boils down to the next workshop we are going to have in the afternoon about natural language processing and its applications. So here is an application for natural language processing, but then we are talking about how we can utilize the natural language for us to write the right prompts. That is what we're going to talk about here. In fact, there are a number of popular prompting related courses online. If those who are interested can look at it. But a prompt has to have these aspects. It has to define, so when you're writing a prompt, you have to define the objective, be clear and precise, consider the context where you are writing, what it is, give those contexts clearly in the prompt so that the LLM will understand. For example, right now, if you ask me a question about size space, even without saying a lot of things, if you ask me, will your tool summarize documents? When I'm talking about size space, if you ask me, will it summarize documents? I will say yes. Why I would say yes is because I know I was talking about size space. I was talking about summarizing document. I was talking about research papers. With all that in mind, and I know the audience who I'm talking to, with knowing all this context, I will give an answer. But if I want to do the same thing with a generative AI tool, ChatGPT, for instance, it will not know, right? It's just out there. And suddenly, if you go and ask, will it summarize my paper? It might not give the answer, right answer, but it doesn't know what it means, what it in the prompt means, and so on. So we have to make sure give the context properly. And we have to set the right tone to give an answer. What sort of answer we expect? Do we expect a short answer? Do we expect a professional answer? We expect an answer which is like very simple, answer that a small kid can understand, an answer only for professionals. Do I want an answer where I just talk like I talk to people, or do I want an answer where I go and do a presentation? Different contexts and different tones, different styles. All that I have to inform in the prompt so that I get the right output. So, and then make sure the questions are asked directly. Avoid biases. Make sure questions that are clear and it will avoid biases. And we can obviously do a lot of testing and refining of these prompts. And also when you are doing prompting, you also have to be careful about the ethical implications. And some of the time these tools have some guardrails to stop violating ethical and privacy concern. However, we should also be careful as writing prompts, communicating, do it properly. So here is an effective prompt under effective prompting techniques. One of the things that is simple and we should always keep in mind is make sure you have a context. You should give a background what you're asking about. So here is an example for generally this prompt I prepared for teachers. So for teachers who are going to teach a course and they are going to prepare what is known as a lesson plan, a plan for a particular lesson or a session, like a lecture, right? So for a lesson plan, this is an example, right? So we can ask things like your context, the context, a background, right? So you are an educational expert who specializes in, I can specify a field, let's say computer science, teaching grade like third year students following undergraduate degree in field computer engineering. So that sort of background we had to give, and then we give a task, instructions, clearly clarify the prompt and refine it as you go. And also don't be shy to redo the prompt. If the prompt is not giving the right answer, update the prompt and keep trying. So that's something, a strategy we had always followed. So second part of it is task. Create a lesson plan that is for 60 minutes on a topic, let's say arrays. We are talking about programming and arrays, something, right? So we can give it up. Then next, your instruction, this has to be very detailed. So we can give instructions like lesson plans must cater to higher order thinking skills, must encapsulate UDL, universal design principle, learning design for learning principles. So that's like different learners. We'll not go into detail, but we can give a lot of details about what we expect as an output. And then we can ask questions like, do you understand? Or you can ask, put refinement like, can you do it better? Think about it further and analyze it further. All those can be included. So by doing such a detailed one, we can go better and prepare a better prompt and expect better results. Right. So I'll just skip that. A few more strategies, right? Clear instructions is a strategy. I already mentioned about clear instruction, but here are some examples. So I should not ask things like how do I calculate revenue, or I should not ask how do I create a project plan. Without asking like this, a very generic question, I should ask a better, more detailed question. By the way, these are not complete prompts. These are part of prompts, but in that context, instead of asking a very simple question, you should ask a question which is with clear instruction. How do I calculate the total revenue for a retail store, given the unit price of products and the number of units sold per month? It has to give more information instead of making it very general, right? So one, you can do it by improving the prompt itself, or you can ask a chatbot to generate prompts, multiple prompts, and then you can decide which prompt is better and use it and so on. Right? So you have to be more detailed, clear. That is something that you have to be worrying. Next, make sure when you are writing prompts, include delimiters or separations, basically. Right? So you are familiar with it because these tools are going to look at these prompts, and first thing it has to do is to identify what are the instructions in the prompt and what are the input in the prompt. If the prompt has an input which is an attachment, then it is okay. It is already delimited because the text, the prompt, the instructions are in the text, and then the attachment, the information, or the input are in an attachment. But if the input and the instruction and the input are in the prompt itself, all are text, better to clearly separate them. And the natural language models right now are good enough that they will separate them by itself, but it is not always the case. For example, if you have a prompt which is instruction and then some information like input, inside the input, if you have some questions or some like queries inside the input, like the text, then the prompt, the system can get confused and think what is in your input or the text or the information is also an instruction. So that can get confused. So it's always good to have the, let me take some example. So we can ask something like summarize the text below as a bullet point list of the most important points. And then you can say this is text, triple quote, you can put the text here. Or you can put curly brackets and put the text here. You can use some sort of a format to put the text separated, the input text separated by the instruction of the prompt. The prompt has to be clearly separated, so it's very easy for the system to understand and do. And output, we can specifically mention the length of the output and what type of output. Even here, we have talking about giving output in bullet points. So how many bullet points? If you want to be specific, we can mention those. We can mention that the output should be tables. We can mention that output should be a specific format. I'll come to that in a while. We can mention that output is in a JSON format or markdown, some markup language, markdown language. Or output is a code snippet of a particular programming language. All that we can specify. We also can specify the length, number of paragraphs, number of bullet points, number of steps. All that can also be mentioned, or we expect exactly what we want. So the prompt is going to be more detailed. Here's an example. Instead of saying summarize the text delimited by triple quote into paragraphs, we can also say things like this. Right? So specific format. Remember I mentioned about specific format here. So we can make a prompt like that. Extract key information about a movie from a given text. The text is given in a separate delimited input. But the format is also separately given. As you can say, desired format, I can say title, movie title, year of the movie, genre of the movie, the plot, summary of the movie, like that. So I also can say, okay, these are the desired output format, but include it in a table. These are the title of a table. There are 10 movies down here in the text to make them summary. So things like that, I can be more specific about the length of the output. When you can see the summary plot, I'm saying 1 sentence summary, not like a paragraph summary. So I can say 3 sentence summary or 100-word summary. All that I can specifically say. Although the output might not be exactly matching, but it will try, the model is expected to try the best to match the output. Right, so that is some more ideas regarding prompts. And we can also specify the steps required to complete the task. I mentioned about task and steps required earlier. So we can specify a task and then we have to give the steps. So here are, like, for example, I can give, okay, do this first step. Here is an example for making a summary and translating the summary into another language of a text. So instead of giving it as a single prompt, we can say, okay, first do this step. Like I will provide the text in triple quote, summarize this text in 1 sentence with a prefix that says summary, and then translate the summary from step 1 into Spanish with a prefix that says translation. So I can specifically say things like this to make steps and make it very clear and precise so that the instructions are clear and you get a better output. So you can also reduce the impreciseness. For example, there's no point of saying things like the description of this product should be fairly short, so just fairly short. A few sentences only, not too much, not very clear. But it can be very clear. You can say use the number of sentences to describe the product. 3 sentences, 4 sentences, or 3 to 5 sentences, or 100 words, 50 words. You can specify like that so to make it more clear. There are other ideas. One such idea is double down. The idea here is based on experiments and trial and errors, people have figured this prompting works better. I talked about giving some prompt and some input or content. Right? The content can come as a table, like an attachment as well, if the tool is allowing you to attach and upload attachments. If not, they are going to be part of the prompt. Prompt will have the instructions and then the content. So I also explained that the content has to be properly delimited and therefore it's very clear. But when you write prompts like this with content and instruction or instruction and content, just one after the other, just two parts, it is found that this is not doing as good as writing something like this. So something like this, meaning you first give some instructions. So the instruction can be some background, but that is what I normally do. I give things like the role the model is supposed to take, and then some background, then some content. Then later I say, okay, so based on all this, do this work. The part of work, the task, the instruction, the scope, refining, I do later. Background first, the role and the background first. What is the role the tool is supposed to take? Behave like an expert of this, behave like an educational expert, or take my persona. If already the tool knows about me a bit by several communication, I can say things like take my person. And then I can say, this is the background. This and this are happening. I'm going to do this research, and this is the background. This is what I'm doing, and this is what is done. So those are going to come first as instruction. And then I give, okay, here is the text. I want you to look at the content. Then I can say, okay, based on this text, based on this background, do this work. I want a summary of it. I want you to analyze it. And I want you to do these steps. Step number 1, do this. Step number 2, do this. Step number 3, do this. Make a summary of 3 sentences. Take the summary and arrange them in a certain order. Different things I can say as steps. And then the last step I can say, okay, now give an answer which is suitable for a publication in a research paper, suitable for a presentation, suitable for a LinkedIn post, or suitable for writing a newspaper article. Right? So I can narrow it down. So I had to basically in this steps what I are talking about is this double down. So it's instruction, then the content, then more instruction. And it is shown that doing this is much better in terms of the output the prompts are producing. Further, as you know, these systems produces a lot of, the AI models or the LLMs has a lot of problems. They normally don't say, I don't know. Like some of us, right? So we don't say, we don't know. When we don't know, we bluff, we say things inappropriate, incorrect, and so on, imaginative. So the same happens with these tools, these systems, and therefore it is always a good idea to give the model a way out. We call it an out. The idea is, for example, something like this. An out could be telling it, okay, ask for more information. If you don't know this, ask for more. If you don't know how to produce a proper answer for my question based on my prompt, ask me more questions. That is one way. Another way is to say, okay, if it is not possible for you to figure out an answer, say you don't know how to do it. Right? So these can be given as part of the prompt. That is what is meant by giving an out. Giving an out meaning the model, we can either ask for more information or say that it doesn't know how to do it, or what it doesn't have enough information to do it. So such things can be part of the prompt. That's the basic idea. Further, I'll spend a few more minutes on the prompting again regarding providing references. So the instruction, when you are giving in when you are instructing the model to answer using reference text, we can insert the reference and also say that use this text. Okay, these are the texts I'm giving. Use them as references in your answer. When I ask a question, give answer, but give references. So these things can be asked, which can help, particularly in research, very useful, because we can't just produce text and go and put them somewhere out there saying it's claiming it's ours without proper references for those claims. So referencing is very important, and you can in fact ask AI models to do it. Remember a tool like I discussed earlier, like Elicit, the summary, it's already putting the references. So it's doing it on its own, but when it comes to ChatGPT like generic platforms. And if you are going through size-based like interfaces or my GPTs, it's always good to ask it to give references. And also you see like what I have written here. If the answers cannot be found in the article, right, I could not find an answer. Instead of hallucinating and coming up with his own answer, we can ask it to explicitly say that it doesn't have the answer in the text that you are looking. Right? So those are very useful ways, because we are doing research and it has to be authentic, it has to be accurate. So we have to be very careful with the prompts we write. Yeah, just more example, and we are also saying it must annotate. We had annotated with citations, including those will help make things better. And it's also possible, another strategy is to let, now that we are talking about research, letting these tools to do more synthesis before giving some quick answers. Actually, we can ask these models to think. Here is one. So one way is we can say determine if the solution, if you can put up my solution is correct or not. Right? For example, we can say, okay, so I have come up with the solution for this problem. Tell me whether it's correct. Very useful in situations like if I go to mark somebody's verify in research situation, somebody else's solution. Somebody has said this is right. One way of doing it. A better way of doing it is this. What we can do is we can first ask the tool or the LLM to come up with an answer to a problem and then compare that answer to the answer that was already given. So 2 steps. So it can first think, come up with an answer, then my answer or somebody's answer, and then compare the two. So therefore, we give it more time to synthesize, come up with its answer. By that time, it also would have gone through the relevant literature or the relevant background in that area. And then I also give an answer, then it can compare 2 answers. And then it can give better analysis, comparison. Instead of just asking for an answer, you can ask it to come up with an answer. Second, give the answer that is given by someone and compare. So it makes it to think further instead of just checking an answer and saying yes or no. So regarding prompting, something else that I find very useful and I always use, I in fact like just pointed out in some places, is a framework. There are plenty of different frameworks. I use this one called Ryzen framework, but there are many. So the framework is just for us to keep in mind, okay, when I'm writing a prompt, these are the things I'm going to have in a prompt. I already mentioned this earlier, but I'll just for like completion, for making sure it's everything in place, I'm putting this framework out. RISEN stands for 5 letters, 5 words. R for role. So what I was telling you earlier when I was giving an example is I start by saying what role I want AI to take. Take my persona is something that I use, or take a persona of marketing expert, or anything else, right, for that matter. So you can use a role, and then with the role, I also give some background. Right? So with the role, I also say, this is the role you take, but this is what we are trying to do here. Right? So these are the things that are happening in this area. So when it comes to research, it's always good to give some more background so that we are working within a certain, like, for example, even if you are using things like iSpace, which has 280 million papers, we don't want our AI model or AI to go and look at 280 million papers for me to give an answer, because that is too many, right? So I might want it to check 1,000 papers or 500 papers. It's okay, but not 280 million. So I had to bring down the scope, and therefore I had to, at the beginning itself, bring the context, bring a background, all that I had to do. That is the research example, literature review example, but it is true for any other example, any other situation we do. So give a role and background, then we give instructions and steps. Instruction is to say what you want to do. Steps is to say each step one by one. And we also can say this is exactly what I expect as output. I was talking about output format, output style, output tone, output length. All those can come as expectation. And final is narrowing. So here I can say, okay, who is the audience? And we can also say things like refine it, rethink about it, compare it with some other answer. So those things are coming under an arrow. So in addition, if I'm having a text or an input to give, I should not give the input at the beginning alone or at the end alone. If I'm giving it as an attachment, I can give an attachment, and then where to say that I have an attachment. So again, that is something that part of the prompt, right? Part of the prompt, I can either insert some text in the prompt or I can attach. In both cases, where to do it? Typically, it is suggested you do it somewhere here, somewhere either here or here, mostly here. Prompt, background. Then if I'm uploading a file, I can say, okay, from background, then I can say that there's more information in the uploaded file that I say next. Oh, I'm going to put some text. I put the text there within proper codes so that it's text. And then I can do the next steps. What is expected, the instructions, the steps, what is expected, what sort of narrowing I want to do, all that I do later. So don't put all the instructions first and then the text, or instruction first and refer to the attachment at the last, or the other way around is not good. Instructions, then input or reference to the input of a file, then the output. That's the order makes the best output possible. So I'll, in the interest of time, so I have some description about each one of those, but I'll not go there. But I'll go to the next topic, but I have been talking fast and a lot. And therefore, let me again take a quick break and ask if you have any questions. The idea is to give you some time at the end also to ask questions, but I hope the prompting techniques were useful, and at least you can get a few out of what I have discussed into your practice. So the framework I mentioned is the overall idea, but then every step of the way, there are a few things: be clear, use text for referencing, those strategies, and saying what format I want. Those deep strategies will help you make things better, more clear to the model, the LLM, and give you the best results possible. Any questions?
If they like, they can use chat also, sir.
Exactly. Yeah, that I mentioned that earlier. So yeah, please, if you don't want to talk, please use the chat to put the questions. I can answer them now, or we can use it to answer some questions later as well. I'm happy to answer more questions and keep on going with more ideas and topics. So please think of a question, put it in the chat, either public to everybody or just to me. Anything is fine. Please put think of questions and include them.
Right, it's very useful to ask. I have some general questions, sir.
Yeah.
The idea here, sometime we going to write a research paper or something, then especially on journals, they are asking about how much of AI generated context kind of things are there. Then is there any idea on that?
Yeah.
Then late.
Yeah, so I will, thank you for that question. In fact, like that is something that I'll be discussing under the challenges and way forward. There are, in fact, if you take formally in an academic setup, research is a place where we have sort of accepted the use of generative AI, exactly like it was mentioned here, right? So, the research publishers generally are accepting generative AI use. So what they are accepting, how we can figure out what to do, how much to do, that is the next thing I'll like during the next challenges and consideration, I'll highlight some references.
Okay.
You can do that. So very
Thank
good.
you.
So there is a question about how do we use AI tools to write a thesis. So writing a thesis is hopefully you are not expecting AI to write the full thesis or at a single go and a single prompt, right? So you will be writing part by part. So obviously the thesis, you have to first talk to your wherever you are submitting the thesis. Let's say your institution, where you're going to submit the thesis. You might have a course which is part of the course coordinator, thesis coordinator. You will have to talk to them and first come to an agreement what they accept as AI generated content. Don't try to cheat. There's no point there, right? So if your coordinator, your supervisor, anybody else, say no, you can't use AI at all, zero. That is so inconsiderate of them in the first place, and also now that all the publishers and good journals and all that are accepting AI generated text, they should also consider those options. So that's the first part. And the second part is you come to an agreement. Okay, this is what we will do. And then you take it forward to the next step. Then you can say, okay, so this is what is allowed for me to do. How do I use it? Then the next steps. Now I'll highlight a few points later to it here. And even a few points if there are academics, those who are like thesis coordinators and so on, what they can do about it. I'll highlight a few points, but it's a very good question. Both the questions are related. One is in the text, which is sent to me directly. How can you use AI tools for writing physics? Which is very much like we are going anyway, when it is accepted, then you will be writing part by part, right? Not as a full thesis in a single go. So writing parts, you'll be using these ideas that I mentioned, but I'll also highlight a few more things as I go in terms of policies, in terms of ethics and so on. Thank you for that question. Please others, feel free to put your questions. I will answer them as we go. So let's move on to the last part of the workshop, which is not really hands-on anymore per se, but we have looked at a lot of tools, at least a few tools and a lot of techniques for hands-on. Now we look at some challenges and some policies, some ethics. So we'll start with challenges. As you know, these tools are not perfect, and therefore we have to make sure while we are using it, we take that responsibility to double check. Misinformation is always possible. I have mentioned, I have given ways out of it, things like these special tools. If you use something like connected paper, then the information that is going to come out of the connected paper website are going to be all from the research papers. So therefore, there is very little chance for misinformation. Or if you take SciSpace or typeset.io, again, everything that is going to come out are from those papers. So there's very little room for misinformation. However, if you are using something like ChatGPT and SciSpace, again, within SciSpace, if the answers are not there, there's a high tendency that ChatGPT can generate some content from its LLM. So that is where we had to give this way out, and a way out to say, okay, the information is not available, and therefore I'm saying I don't know. I should say I don't know answer for this part. So the right prompting techniques will help, right? So that's something we had to do, and we had to be careful about misinformation and make sure we are producing information from the right sources. Citing the sources is important. Those are things, and also we had to double check whatever that was generated. We had to double check as authors, because we are the authors. We are going to use these tools, so it's our responsibility to double check. So misinformation is a challenge. So, and we have ways of coming out of it. I have highlighted many of them earlier, right? So human authors carry the responsibility for checking the correctness of any sentence that is generated, because these papers are going to be, or anything that you write are going to be, you are the author, not AI. So therefore, you can't pass the responsibility to AI. The responsibility in GenAI, any of these tools. So your responsibility is with you. So double checking is your responsibility to avoid misinformation. And these tools lack logical reasoning, and therefore make sure we are double checking those, and also doing a few other corrective measures, right? So it's possible for these tools. For example, if you just tell these tools, here are some examples given. For the interest of time, I'll not go into the exact detail, but if you may give it a puzzle which is a bit confusing, it might give totally wrong answer. However, it is possible to make this correct by asking these tools to go through steps. Like LLM, ask it to go through steps. So if you have a puzzle, ask it to go through steps, like give me the steps to do it. Then what it's going to do, it's going to break down the problem into steps, and it's going to solve step by step. Do this part, do this part, do this part, and so on. So when smaller parts are there, say for example, division or even arithmetic, some maths things, multiplication or any other permutation, combination, or any problem, it is possible when it is step by step, individual steps, it's very unlikely it makes a mistake because it's not logically thinking. It's just looking at her models and finding answers. And therefore, breaking it down to smaller steps or asking it to break the problem into smaller steps is a way of solving it. But you have to be careful when you are thinking of logical, because it lacks logical reasoning. Other one is, as you know, now most of these models have search facility. Most of these chatbots have search facility, which search from search real time, meaning from places where it is already indexed, like any search engine. However, if you don't have the search facility, then the model itself is not current. It's coming from older data. It has cut-off dates. These models are trained earlier. As you know, these are pre-trained models, and therefore the data that it produces is outdated by the time we are using it. So we have to be careful about it when we are using the data. We have to double check whether there is any updated information about any data. So that's another problem where we face. One more problem we face is we rely too much on these tools. Right. So just as a joke, the question that was asked is, can we use it for writing thesis? One way of thinking about it is, can't we just ask it to do the whole research, the thesis itself? Right. So can it do it? Is it capable of doing it? So now we are talking about it can do literature survey, it can take few papers together, put them together. What if I carefully make a prompt to say, do a research for me? Starting from the finding a problem, doing literature, identifying gaps, coming up with solutions, doing an analysis, find data, all those 20 different steps until writing a thesis. Can these 20 steps be done by this tool on its own? Our understanding is if these tools are not capable of doing all this at the same time, as of now. Right? Therefore, we can't over rely on these tools. We have to rely on these tools where it is possible. So obviously, so this curve actually is highlighting an example of what is known as the over-reliance problem or the Dunning-Kruger effect, which basically says when you when you start using a new tool that does something very exciting, we might think the tool can do everything. But it is not true. The tool can't really do everything. Tool can only do a certain things. How will I get to know about it? It's by using the tool. By using it carefully, responsibly, so that I'll understand that the tool can do certain amount of things. When I know the tool can do this and this and this very well, the next thing I can do is to use the tool to do those steps much better. So if I know the limitations and the capabilities of these tools, then I can do better. A workshop like this is exactly an effort to do that. The workshop like this is not to tell you, okay, now you can just sit and relax and use these tools to do research. No, obviously, completely no. Right? So the workshop like this is to make you aware, these are the possibilities with these tools. These are the limitations with these tools. And therefore, you can use these tools much better than just over relying on these tools and letting the tool to do everything. It's not possible. So that is why the workshop like this is important, and understanding what this tool does better is important. So over reliance is another problem, another challenge, but overcoming it is by start using it, understanding the capabilities and limitation of these tools, and start using them responsibly. And there are other concerns like privacy. So if I mentioned a few of those things earlier, if a manuscript is coming for you for a review, or like a grant proposal is coming to you, you should not use these tools for doing those. If you have private information about people, you should not use these tools to share those information to get some output, because those are information given to you in confidentiality, and you are responsible for those. So privacy concerns are a concern. So when you are using these tools, you have to be very careful with private information, including research information that was shared with you confidential, using confidentiality agreements, or even things like reviews are done under such agreement. Maybe not written and signed, but agreed. So privacy concerns have raised a lot of challenges in the past, but I'll not go into all of them. There are some examples where one company is suing another. Wall Street Journal is reporting something related to Google and some actually publishers in the country. And then you can see New York Times, another report on OpenAI, and Microsoft is getting into trouble with Times. Times is the agency who is publishing things like the New York Times and a lot of several other Times related publications, very reputed, and they all have gone to court on situations like that. So that they're saying that their data privacy is violated by these companies like OpenAI by collecting data without them giving consent and so on. So there are challenges of that nature. What can we do about these challenges is the more important aspect, and let's discuss that a bit. And then I in fact like mentioned a few things earlier, but I'll elaborate them further systematically, and then I'll be happy to answer a lot of questions. I see a couple of questions already being listed. More questions, please feel free to put your questions. I'll take the next few minutes after finishing this to answer those. One of the considerations I propose is that whenever we are going to use AI systems in general, for whatever usage it is, generative AI, take all measures possible to understand why we are using it. Now, for example, the question that was asked about writing thesis. Are we going to use AI regarding writing thesis so that an AI can do some research and write a thesis? Is it what you want? Or we want the students or whoever is doing research to write thesis and AI to come and help accelerate, improve the outcome, when I say improving the outcome of a research, I'm not only talking about the research outcome. I'm also talking about the researcher, the trainee outcome. Like, let's say, for example, a research student doing research. The main outcome of a research student doing research is the research student's capabilities. The research student should become a better researcher. We should make sure that outcome is also achieved. Right? So therefore, what I'm saying is, when I'm going to do this, when you are going to use these tools, let us be clear of the purpose. Why we are using these tools? What's the purpose? Let us be clear. So if the purpose of a particular work, a particular task is for, let's say, literature review. Now, the literature review, if you take, we are going to write a half a page literature review somewhere. As a researcher, I'm going to write it. As an author, I'm going to write it. What is the objective there? Is it for me to learn how to write literature review? Or is it for me to convey some literature about a topic to somebody else? Or is it both? If it is both, then it is best that I learn how to write literature. And then it is best that I take that and write my literature on my own and do. If it is one of the two, let's say if it is about me just conveying some information, but I know how to write. I have written 200 plus papers. I know how to write literature review. I have been supervising several students. I have been teaching how to do this to other people. I have been training. So I don't want to learn how to write because I already know. In a situation like that, the purpose is to produce a literature review that is useful for others, not just for me to learn how to write. In a situation like that, I can just, get some ideas, put them together, give it to an AI tool, ask it to write it. Make it faster. So, and also make sure the output is correct. I don't want to know how to write it because I don't know. And so situations like, so therefore we have to be very careful, think carefully, and decide what is the objective of what we are doing, and then decide how to take it forward. In whatever the situation, you can use it for several things, right? So things like that are listed here. I already mentioned about that, therefore I'm not mentioning them again in detail. But in any situation, make sure whatever is that you are producing as output is verified by you, at least verified by you. Even if you are writing something, you don't just go and sit and write like a novel when you're writing a paper or a research publication. You write them carefully. You make sure what you are saying is correct. You make sure what you are saying is referred or mentioned, research, right? Unless there are some basic idioms or basic things like that are already established. That if you are coming up with something new, you always have to make sure if you are writing something that is not very well established, you have to always find places where they are established and put them as references or citations, or you have to do it on your own and then cite. So make sure what you write is verified correct, particularly in research, obviously in other situations as well. And when you are doing this work and also writing them properly, I already mentioned about what to expect in a prompt. They are again listed here and they are fine, not going into detail. I already have that. Just a duplication of a slide. More on verification. Always make sure verification is done. So here I'm just highlighting some few mistakes that appeared in very reputed journals due to the reason that there is some oversight. In fact, some of these were later said to be places where last minute changes were not double checked and therefore they missed. So these are coming from very well established publishers. So what I'm saying is it's okay making mistakes, but we have to be careful. We have to double check whatever we are producing, even if we are producing using AI. And we call this duty of verification or HILT or human in the loop, we call it. So whenever we do this, we are taking the responsibility as authors. For example, both of these articles, there are names of authors. So these are the authors who are responsible for whatever is here, not AI tools. Same here, whatever is here is the responsibility of these authors. So make sure those authors have to take the responsibility of what is coming out there. So that has to be done. And there are also tools for doing plagiarism test and AI detection test and so on. Those tools are having both positive and negative outputs. Like sometimes they are working correctly and sometimes they are not. But make sure that is why I told you, like if when a thesis is going to be written using it, make sure those who are going to take the thesis, look at it, correct it, understand. So you have an understanding both ways. This is what is expected, and therefore I can use it in this way and so on, right? So have that understanding. And I already mentioned about safeguarding confidentiality of other people, avoid sharing sensitive information. Whenever you want examples or it is a very good practice in the prompting to include examples. However, if you include sensitive information in example, that is going to be wrong. That is not good to do, like not ethical to do. So make sure the sensitive information are not shared. Generic examples are shared when you are doing examples for prompts or any other information. Anonymize information when you are using it. And also, what is the platform you use? Make sure, look at its privacy policy. Say ChatGPT, the paid version has different privacy policy to the free version. So look at those to understand. And there are also tools like ChatGPT, which I'm very familiar with. There are toggles. You can say, okay, let's say information can be shared with others. It will be private to use. And there are things like what is known as you can stop its memory for a certain part of it so that it won't take what you are communicating to its memory. So it will be just taken and forgotten, temporary situations and all that are possible. So make sure you understand those before you use it so that you are on the right side without making those mistakes on your data and also any other private information, sensitive information you have about anybody else or about any other research. right? So that we have to be careful. Okay, come to the point about other publications. So now almost all publishers, let me just take an example. Give me take another example, like some detail to show you. On publications and what is accepted and so on. It's because it came as a question, it's good to give a more detailed answer. So it's very clear and we can take it forward from there. Which one is shared now? Let me share again. Right. So this is an article I wrote some time back, early this year, regarding. I'll put a link of this to the chat so that you can look at it. So this is regarding publications. How publishers are accepting. There are some examples, but then there are more, right? So how publishers are accepting generative AI in academic publication. So this, I have taken popular publishers like Hope, Elsevier, Springer Nature, Science Magazine, Taylor and Francis, MDPI, Wiley, and so. So if I just take one example, like Elsevier. So if you go to the Elsevier publishers website, they have publishing ethics, under which there's an area on AI. Find it. Yeah. So the use of generative AI and AI-assisted technologies in the journal editorial process. So there's a visit the link to review our generative AI policy for editors. So this is for editors, and there are others for authors as well. So if you go here, they have the detail. So it says the use of generative AI and AI-assisted technologies in scientific writing. This part is for authors. They go into detail how to do it. They are also linking it back to ethics in publishing policies. Where the authors use generative AI and AI-assisted technologies in writing, these technologies should only be used to improve readability and language of the work. Applying the technology should be done with human oversight and control. And authors should carefully review and edit the results, because the AI can generate authoritative sounding output that can be incorrect, incomplete, or biased. So information like this is given. This is just one publisher. I'm just taking an example. So that there are information about this for the others as well, reviewers, but how the reviewers should work on it, how the editors should look at it. Those details are already there in. This is just Elsevier, one of the largest publisher. They are one. But then there are many others like that, each one publisher. So I have put a summary here. But can be done, like MDPI, for instance, disclose AI contribution transparently, detailing the extent and nature of AI involvement. Nature explicit disclosure of use in the papers methodology section is required, so it's actually explicitly disclosed. So they are specifically saying what has to be done for each one, and I already have shared that link. So that is one, right? So about publishers, popular, very popular research publishers, but they are talking about what can be included. Even for conference papers, Sri Lanka is we are using most of our conferences, including the conference you had yesterday, is technically supported by IEEE. So IEEE conferences, they again have a guideline on AI use. And there are conferences who are using IEEE logo as technical sponsors are now adapting to such techniques and such ethics and such practices. So therefore, it's possible. It's possible. However, we have to be very careful. We have to have a clear understanding what we are trying to do and agree upon that use. Right. So that is something that is important we have to do. And I just wanted to show the next one from the slide, and also at the same time this other article. So this article I wrote at the same time on citing generative AI tools across different scientific writing styles. So earlier I spoke about how publishers are accepting or not accepting, what they are accepting as things that are done with AI writing. Here the writing style, right? For example, if you take different writing styles like Chicago manual writing styles, they say this is how generative AI, here's an example of how generative AI can be cited. APA style, they have some references. Here's an example of how APA style it can be cited. IEEE style, how it can be done again is there. I didn't put an example, but it's in that website, the link. So I'll share this article as well for those who are interested and interested in and knowing how to cite. Obviously, these things can be found by searching the web, but here is just a summary, so it's easy for you to go and find whether you are using IEEE style for citing, APA style, Chicago, and so on. Then you can just directly use the style. So APA style website again talks about how to cite ChatGPT type tools in their website. Here's an example, right? So on. So it's that's the same thing I have here as well, citing the use of generative AI tools. I just put one example, but now that I have given the links, I hope that is more easier for you to navigate and understand. So that's regarding citations and what publishers are expecting, right? So I'll finish or maybe I'll answer the questions and then I finish. Let me see the question. There are a few more interesting questions that have come out during this time. So I hope I have given some answers related to writing thesis. And then the next question is, what is the risk level of asking questions about fresh research idea, GenAI system? Is it reuse those ideas? Okay, so if the question is, I assume the question is, if we have a research idea, can we ask anything about those fresh ideas? Yes, those fresh ideas, if you give enough detail, they can be used for training new data, and therefore this idea can also get stored. That is why I said you should go and look at the privacy policy. And whenever such things happen, what I personally am doing is ChatGPT type platform has ways of stopping sending my data, but obviously for doing that you need a paid account. If I'm right, I obviously have a paid account, and therefore what I'm doing is I'm stopping my data, my information, whatever I'm sharing, to be shared outside or to the memory and or to the databases. So that I am doing when I'm doing some sensitive data to be shared and checked. So that is the answer to it. So obviously, yes, if you have if you're coming up with new ideas, the idea, let's say, which cannot be normally derived from multiple links together. You know, like generally the idea is that we come up with these ideas by knowing certain areas. So tools like ChatGPT or LLMs has also access to these areas. So therefore, we can also work with it to brainstorm and come up with these ideas by putting things together. We can say, okay, why don't you take some problem here? Let's say a problem in health sciences, go and check the solutions to a similar problem or under the problem in health sciences. Has it been solved? Look at all this literature and identify the underlying problem in it, scientific problem in it. Then ask it, okay, can you go and look at agriculture, or can I go and look at social sciences? Can you go and look at any other discipline, right? So to solve this specific problem, is it being solved in this domain, and can it be applied to this our domain? All this can be brainstormed by quickly analyzing data in all these different domains. But that is the good part about the brainstorming we can do with tools like ChatGPT. But at the same time, if you by on your own come up with ideas on your own, maybe you have to be careful in sharing it, making sure the privacy settings are such that this information are not stored and used for further training in the future. So those you have to be careful. That is what I mentioned about under consideration as well. It's a very good and interesting question. Let me check other questions. How does cloud AI and GPT compare? Strength, weaknesses, etc. Okay, so I'll answer one by one. So me myself, I'm not, although I have tried different platforms, I myself is mostly using day-to-day ChatGPT. But based on a lot of those who are using things like the cloud AI, one of the things that was identified, okay, maybe I'll take 4 different platforms. The question is about 2, but I'll take 4. ChatGPT, Gemini from Google, Copilot from Microsoft, and then okay, Copilot and ChatGPT similar, so I'll leave it out. So Gemini, ChatGPT, Cloud, Perplexity. Right, so these 4 are 4 popular platforms, including Copilot, a 5 popular platform used by a lot of people, large number of users, ChatGPT being on the top. So these platforms, there are differences they claim. I haven't myself tested it enough to say that they are my claims. They are other people's claim, but I have talked to people, looked at what other people are writing and so on. So ChatGPT is very generic, and it is very versatile and flexible, but at the same time it has limitations, like it is producing results sometimes more machine-like than people-like. But compared to that, cloud is supposed to produce text that are very much human-like. So it was in the ratings, cloud is at the very top, the very first tool that can produce more human-like text. That is cloud. So if you are into cheating, which I discourage completely, that is a tool to go for. And then other tools like Perplexity is, I mentioned it somewhere earlier during mention about searching. So Perplexity is expected to take over searching compared to Google type search. It's not in the very near future. Obviously, Google is still the most popular search engine, but Perplexity is more of a searching tool. Then Gemini or Gemini is supposed to be much better in making larger context. Like, let's say you are writing, say, there's a question about writing thesis, right? So if ever you want to write a complete thesis using a single go, or at least a chapter of a thesis in a single go, like let's say a paper in a single go, then something that can keep larger number of tokens within context and do things in a single go, it's Gemini out of all these. Right? So that is why Gemini is good in that sense compared to other tools. And obviously Copilot has an advantage. I said I won't say it, but that's the 5th one. Copilot has an advantage because it has more information about us, our document, because most of the document, let's say we are sharing these documents using, like we are doing a lot of office productivity tools in Microsoft mostly. And therefore, Copilot has access to, or we can give access to Copilot with a lot of office productivity tools plus email and so on. So it can do a lot of integrations faster. So Copilot is good for integrating, finding things from your book, like your Word document, and put it to an Excel sheet. From there, make it a table, make it a presentation, put it to an email like Live or Outlook or something. Those connections, Copilot is good. Microsoft Copilot is good. So those are the differences between tool based on not all my own claims, but based on what other people have told and written, and what I read based on those. How does these companies profit by providing these services for free? Right. So obviously they are not making money by giving this for free. The ultimate objective is to make money by selling, but at the same time, for now, they need data. So the free versions are provided for collecting the data. Obviously, search engines are providing for free, but then they are earning money through advertising, as you know. And for now, these tools are not yet doing a lot of advertising. But then for now, they are doing it for collecting data. But there will be a time they will turn and make it a profitable thing, or through other means like advertising and so on. So for now, it's collecting data. So data is the money. Third one, do you recommend paid version of ChatGPT or free version for research work? So for any work, actually, I personally think the paid version has more advantage in terms of number of tokens, how long you can use it, and how many prompts you can use it, and so on. So that is personally, I'm using a paid version. So for research, if you are going to do it, use it only for so things like ChatGPT is a tool useful. It's a versatile tool. Like I said, I'm using it for research maybe 20% of the time. I use it for everything else. So the payment I'm making is for everything, not just research. If you are thinking of only for research, and let's say you are a research student, you are going to only do like analyzing papers and write here and there. Maybe there are other tools, things which are cheaper. Like connected papers or SciSpace. So one of those might be cheaper, and understand what you want to do, and also you can also pay by month. So you can decide for a particular period what tool you want. If you are going to use it only for that, then ChatGPT might not be the solution. But if you are going to use, like me, anybody else, like nowadays, we are not only using we are not using generative AI tools not only for the research work, but for any other productivity work, then yes, it's worth. I hope, okay, there's one more question. Is Quillbot the best AI for plagiarism finding? Okay, plagiarism finding, Quillbot is not the best tool. For now, I think Turnitin AI detector is much better. Turnitin has an AI finding tool that is the AI, as you know, Turnitin is the plagiarism detection, but they also have an AI detector that I believe is the best. But there are a few other tools that are out there for AI detection. AI detection is a very challenging task because what we are trying to do there is to detect whether AI generators are not so good. Because AI generator research is about doing the best research possible to build the best tool. ChatGPT is built, and people are keep on trying to do a lot more research to make ChatGPT write things as human. Now AI detectors are trying to do the opposite, meaning are trying to find whether they are not human. Right. So therefore, it's a challenging task. For now, the best tool I think is coming from Turnitin group. They have multiple tools. One for research. So for research, they have a tool like Authenticate, which checks whether things are coming from paper. But AI detector, in any of those tools, are to see whether the things are written by AI. Yeah, I hope I answered all the questions. And let me just quickly finish. So here are some tools again. Like I'm just quickly finishing because I'm almost on time. You can take a screenshot of it. I hope this recording will be shared. If not, so there are tools. In fact, like I mentioned about prompting, but then there are tools for doing prompting. Right? So you can think of those tools. And I mentioned about this consensus also. I didn't show it. Consensus has a MyGPT like SciSpace. And then on tools like searching, Perplexity and Meta we didn't discuss about it, is something good. So in fact, this table is not, this is not coming from me, it's coming from Steve, another AI enthusiast who is doing a lot of work, dissemination work related to AI, generative AI particularly. So the questions, if you have, whether AI is going to replace all of us and we can be happy and content, the answer is no. That is why we are doing all this effort. We are training and making sure we all are AI ready, meaning we can use AI and become better. For those who can do AI are expected to be better than those who can't. As per Feli, that was Feli said it sometime back, but it's becoming very prevalent now. With that, I'll close on time. And anyone who wanted to get connected with me and have a chat, ask more questions, feel free to do so. That's my LinkedIn profile, and also that's a QR code for the same. And that's it. And thank you very much for a lot of interesting questions and listening to me for the last almost 3 hours. Thank you.
Okay, so respected President of SLI, Conference Chair, SLI members, esteemed speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon all of you. A very big thank you to our distinguished speaker, Professor Roshan Ragel, Professor, Department of Computer Engineering, Faculty of Engineering, University of Peradeniya, who generously shared his knowledge, insights, and experiences with us. Your expertise has enriched the minds of everyone present here today. We appreciate your time and effort dedicated to making this event a valuable learning experience. Let us carry forward the knowledge gained from the workshop through our research path. Thank you very much, sir. So the second workshop will be continued from 1 p.m. onward. It will be delivered by Mr. Dinesh Asankar, a senior lecturer, Faculty of Science, University of Kelaniya, under the title of NLP and Applications. So you can use the same link to join by 1 p.m. again. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you all.
Thank you very much for having me also for joining. Thank you.
You, sir.